Welcome to Heart Failure Unfiltered. My name is Nick Hartson-Evans and I'm the founder and CEO of the Pumping Marvellous Foundation, the UK's heart failure charity. Today, we'll be discussing finding heart failure earlier, why timing changes everything. This is the first episode of a series of 2 podcasts talking to a person living with heart failure, a system leader of an integrated care board, and a life science leader who has funded the BTHF Heart Health events with a hands-off grant. Receiving a diagnosis is only the beginning. This podcast asks one question over and over again. Beat the diagnosis. Why being first across the line to detect heart failure matters, not only to the patients, but all stakeholders.
Will my heart ever get better?
For some people, treatment can improve how well the heart pumps. For others, medicines and care help manage symptoms and protect the heart long term. Everyone's journey is different, which is why regular care and the right support are so important. Welcome to Heart Failure Unfiltered. Today we're in the Liverpool podcast studios, which is my home because seem to be doing podcasts every week, which is great. Informative and insightful podcasts. And today we've got some special guests as usual. So I'm going to start with, Gav.
Hi, I'm Gav Redhead. I'm a patient educator with the Pumping Marvellous Foundation, and I was diagnosed with heart failure in 2019.
Cool. And Amy?
Nice to see everybody. So I'm Amy Newton. I'm part of the Medtronic team, a life science organisation that makes medical devices.
And Gail?
Hi everybody, I'm Gail. I work for the ICB and I'm a CVD Prevention Commissioner.
So we've got some really, really interesting guests on today. So let's start off with, the patient is everything that our organisation, the Pumping Marvellous Foundation, is about. So we need to set the scene. So Gav, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us about your heart failure journey, what happened.
Yeah, okay. I know people might be familiar with my story. I've done a few podcasts now, but for those people who haven't heard my story before, so I was born with a hole in my heart, which developed into hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Spent most of my life coping with that. Want too many issues with it. Been told several times I'll be dead by the time I'm 25, dead by the time I'm 50.
How old are you now?
61. So I managed to outbeat that, but in around 2019, I started to become more breathless. I was coughing a lot. I was struggling to walk long distances. I was struggling to get upstairs. I had a persistent cough, and that carried on for, I would say, around 6 months. And I just got worse and worse. I had quite a senior position in a local authority, but I also did quite a lot of youth work, direct contact with young people. And I was struggling to keep up with them when we were walking any distances, took members of youth parliament to Houses of Parliament, and they were way ahead of me, and I had to keep slowing them down and other issues. Now, in terms of diagnosis, prompted by my wife several times, I eventually went to my GP surgery, turned up at my GP surgery, gave them some of the signs and symptoms that I was experiencing, the breathlessness, the coughing, the persistent coughing, by that stage probably around every 10 minutes, every 10 seconds, I should say. And initially it was given an inhaler, which is quite common. I think if you look at our patient population, it's quite a common thing. They usually go for the lungs first. That's one of the areas that
because you associate breathlessness
with not being able to breathe and cough. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So that's one of the things. So the inhaler had no effect, which it wouldn't do, because what was happening was actually I was fluid overloaded. My lungs were taking on fluid. It was being backed up into my lungs. So in effect, I was drowning internally, and got to a point where one night I was having a family meal. We had family around. I was having a family meal, and I just said, I need to go to bed. I'm just so exhausted. I need to go to bed. Took 3 attempts and finally managed to get upstairs. When I was in bed, I was sleeping on 3 pillows, propped almost upright, because every time I laid down, I think I've said in previous podcasts, it felt like I was being waterboarded, like somebody was pouring water down my throat. But I sat on the edge of the bed. I tried to lie down and I just couldn't breathe. So I couldn't shout for my wife because I was so breathless. So I had to text her and say, can you come up? She came up and I said, I can't breathe. I can't do this anymore. So ambulance was called. They came out, said, we might take you into A&E. What do you think? I think I need to go. I can't breathe. So I went into A&E. Whilst I was having had usual tests, etc. Whilst I was at A&E, luckily I'd been to see my GP, who had a special interest in cardiology, much better. He'd started doing some of the things. I'd had an echo. He'd started doing some of the tests and things.
An echo is a heart scan.
Yeah, heart scan. Yeah, so I was checking what was happening, and I got the results through that day, so you could see it on the app. So I showed the result. I didn't think we'd even had a printout of it. I'm not sure whether it was a cardiologist. We think it was a registrar from the cardiology department. Came to see him. He looked at the thing, looked at some of the results that they'd done, heart tracings, etc., and said, "You've got severe heart failure." So I'm in hospital. Got severe heart failure. At that stage, I've been under the genetics team. I'd had several ICDs put in. I was on my third ICD at that stage. My defibrillator, I should say. People aren't familiar with that device. And he said, "Do you want to remain under our care, or do you want to continue going to Manchester?" Well, I was in the Manchester Heart Centre, so it felt more appropriate that I go to Manchester.
Yeah, sure.
And he said, "When you get to Manchester, you need to start talking about a transplant."
Oh my goodness.
Any questions?
Bang.
See another, yeah. So that was kind of a bit of a rough diagnosis, a bit of a shock diagnosis, and not the nicest way to put it across. That I've got to go and see another patient now and then, and gone out of the room.
Did you have any? Sorry, Nick.
So no, you go.
Did you have any idea what that meant when they told you about heart failure? Had you already kind of got that in your mind, or completely out of the blue?
I think we'd started to think about it, but it doesn't. I think until somebody gives you a diagnosis and you get a clear explanation of that diagnosis, that's when I'm one of these people that gathers. Once I know something, I can gather information about it and I can do something about it. But I didn't really understand the implications of it at that stage.
This is a really interesting analogy, okay? I've just thought about this. It's not a script thing.
Yeah.
But you've got a real experience, a real life lived experience of fast.
Yeah.
If you'd have had beat, would it have clocked that maybe it was?
Yeah.
But not like fast with strokes.
Yeah. So I had a stroke, as Nick said, later on in my heart failure journey, prior to transplant. And so you're familiar with it. It's in your face, etc. It's on TVs. You see adverts about it. What were you doing? I've never seen beat, and I'd never seen beat until I joined Pumping Marvellous. I didn't know anything about it. I've since seen it. We've had it in railway stations. We've had it in lots of promoted T-shirts, etc. It's on everything, and I think it's important that the general public, and clinicians who are not experts in heart failure, so nurses that are dealing with, they might get patients that are being referred to them, asthma nurses, etc., that are being referred to them. Are they checking that is it just asthma, or could it be heart failure? And I know we've done events about this, and I think it's really key that we broadcast the beat message and get that out to as many people as possible, the general public, clinicians, people who lead integrated care boards, etc., to make sure that message gets across, and it just becomes part of similar as fast as they say.
Because it's an interesting dynamic that you had a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy for such a long time. You were under the heart centre.
Yeah.
So you would have thought somebody would have thought maybe it's a cardiac issue, not a respiratory issue.
Yeah.
And I think it just says everything about how underinvested we are in heart failure and how much we need to invest in it, because that inhaler conversation.
Yeah.
I have heard, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, and I know you've heard it.
Yeah.
Inhaler. I was given an inhaler, and 12 months later I had fluid overload, couldn't breathe, and I was in hospital because I had heart failure.
Yeah.
So obviously an important thing. But how often do we hear the phrase, early diagnosis saves lives? And what does that mean in cardiovascular disease and heart failure, Gail?
I mean, exactly what you said there. It saves lives. We find it sooner. That means less damage has been done. In some cases, no damage has been done. If we can find someone before they've got hypertension, that means that their chances of an MI stroke are significantly reduced. Whereas if we leave it, the chances are we're going to see them in A&E, and for some people, it's just too late.
So these people who walk around with red flags on their head, when they've got hypertension and they've got type 2 diabetes, and they're like red flag for heart failure, we're still slow at picking them up, aren't we?
Yeah.
And why is that?
I mean, some of it I think is maybe a bit of complacency. There's always going to be something that's a priority because everything's a priority. So, maybe the priority at the time is diabetes, or maybe it's hypertension, and people get so focused on that they don't then look at the things that could be happening around for that patient. So when you're looking at your diabetes patient, straight away comes to your mind, you've got to check the HbA1c. We need to make sure what their sugars are doing. And actually we need to look at their feet, which we're not great at either. But we don't necessarily think about the blood pressure.
My toes have just twitched.
But also we might do something like, we might look at their blood pressure and be like, well, your blood pressure's high. What does that mean to anybody? That's like us saying, you've got heart failure.
Yeah.
What does high blood pressure mean to the common, person walking around? I was saying common person, but you know what I mean? The general person walking around on the street. What does it mean, high blood pressure?
Generally nothing to them.
It doesn't really mean nothing.
Nothing to them because...
So why are we spending loads of money on?
So there are no side effects to having high blood pressure generally.
It's the silent killer.
So you might get a headache if you're lucky, that'll tell you that. Otherwise, you probably don't know anything. And what we do is we take your blood pressure, we find that it's high, and we give you medication that then gives you some side effects. Lots of medications, you start off on the side effects. But then after a little while, they settle down and things are great, and if you can get your blood pressure down to the right level, happy days. But it's those people who we don't necessarily know that their blood pressure is high, and then the next thing we know, they've had a heart attack, and we're like, oh yeah, your blood pressure was high, that's why you've had a heart attack. For some people, that's not a problem. They've had the heart attack, they learn the lesson, they control their blood pressure, they eat less salt, they eat a better diet, more exercise. But for some people, even that's not enough, and so lots of education needs to be had. But Professor Ian Ashworth will tell you it's primordial. So that means even before we start looking at people, so we say to you, you've got hypertension. No, before then, before you've even gone down the as a child, basically before you've got hypertension, that's when we need to be starting to get people's lifestyle up to the place where we need them, rather than saying, oh, you've got hypertension. It's well before that we need to start getting onto this. But for the NHS, that's a huge cultural shift because we treat people, we don't.
But haven't we failed in CVD prevention? I mean, we're failing all the time, aren't we? I mean, there's billions put into this. What's your opinion, Amy? What's your thoughts around early diagnosis?
So, I mean, it's a no-brainer, but it's about mobilising that within the system, and it's about creating these collaborative networks to allow us to do that, because everything happens in silos, and by having that happen in silos has unintended consequences, and most of the time for the patients, like you talked about. So my role within Medtronic has not necessarily been within the clinical team, but more in the value-based healthcare, understanding the patient population impacts of a device coming into the market and how that can change a pathway. And most recently brought sustainability into that. And obviously cardiovascular diseases are also going to have a compounding effect through climate change and heat, which is no irony being here today with the temperatures we have. But the trajectory of the heat impacts that we have coming will have that unequal effect on cardiovascular and respiratory diseases. So essentially, it's going to be a double whammy. We've got challenges in the system, so we have to do prevention. And then if we can't do prevention, or we can do prevention with a long-term outcome, we can do medium-term pieces and short-term pieces where we start to manage and diagnose earlier and catch those patients and start looking at these patients differently. Yeah,
I mean, your product is down the line from the early detection, but you recognise and you see all the time that we have to strive for better recognition of cardiovascular diseases, but also let's get it quick and let's treat it quick. And then we know that we get better health outcomes,
Yeah.
But we're coming into it. We thought we may have the MSF, which is the modern service framework, which should put, but we haven't.
Coming.
Yeah. It just
won't be modern anymore.
Yeah.
The old
past,
service framework.
Blame the politicians. So how do we take this sort of mentality into communities, Amy and Gail? How do we do that?
You want to start?
Go on.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think the new 10-year plan is really helping guide some of the transformation that needs to happen.
That's the NHS 10-year plan.
It's the NHS 10-year plan, yes.
And that is a plan that is developed by the NHS of what their priorities are over 10 years.
Yes, absolutely. And they've got three main trajectories that they're trying to implement to address multiple different challenges that the NHS has. And so you've got sickness to prevention, looking at that more long-term trajectory of how do we catch patients earlier, how do we create healthy communities. Ultimately, that's not just better for patients, that's better for those communities, it's also better for the economy. So there is lots of levers that are being pulled through that NHS 10-year plan. You've then got digital to analog, like how do we actually then capture all of those symptoms for patients so that people can have a bit more data in front of them. So we might
joined up data as well.
Joined up data. And also then that allows you to start to move patients through the system with a level of autonomy. And then that helps with the hospital to community trajectory on the 10-year plan. So I think that's providing a good framework. I think now the challenge is the how, we are going through transformation in the NHS. We also have political cycles. So consistency is key, and then the funding needs to follow that. So that's where I think, industry can also support in trying to, come from a different perspective with different stakeholders in the system to try and influence that and stimulate those discussions, right?
Yeah, or stimulate activities. So we get into the BEAT initiative.
Yeah.
So you for the past 2.5 years, you've funded the BEAT initiative for us across the country.
Yeah.
We've seen nearly 13,000 people across the country, all different shapes, sizes, and whatever. I mean, it's amazing. But Gail, one for you.
Yeah.
But how do community-based initiatives like the BEAT Heart Health events, how do they support the NHS priorities?
It's brilliant. I love BEAT. So it's it's all around our health inequalities. Cheshire and Merseyside is the region with the most core 20, we have a thing called core 20 plus 5, and our population basically.
You may need to explain some of the little jargonistic
So core
stuff.
20 plus 5 is the core 20% of people sort of in deprivation, and then plus 5 we put some things over top of that, so maternity and ill mental health and stuff. The majority of the people in Cheshire and Merseyside live within that core 20 category. So they're the most deprived people, and what we find is the most deprived people tend to fare less well when it comes to health. And so it kind of helps us with those inequalities by providing care closer to home. So you might think, that's silly, anyone can go to the hospital. But for a lot of people, it's not as straightforward as just getting there. Sometimes transport is an issue, or, they might need a carer, they can't park, they don't drive, or the bus doesn't go that way. So what the BEAT does is it brings it right to where those people are. And the nice thing about a lot of our health centres in Cheshire and Mersey are that they are really within the populations. They're not kind of on a pedestal anywhere, that they're in the heart of the community. And they're usually next door to somewhere that people go, whether it be Morrison's or Asda, or whether it's the one-shop stop where they go and pay their bills. So it's kind of there, and it's a trip that they were making anyway, so we're not asking them to go out of their way. And then we don't wait for them to come to us in that way. So at the hospital, we're waiting for you to turn up at the hospital because you're not well. And actually, we want to do is we want to come see you, Gav, in your own community and say, do you know what? Something's going on. Let's find out what that is. And for a lot of people in those communities, it's not something that you do. There are a lot of communities where you don't talk about your health, or if you do, it's kind of a bit frowned upon, or I'm a bit worried about it. So I don't want to talk about it because what happens if they tell me something that awful is going to happen to me? Whereas they feel quite confident to do that within their own communities, so they can have those conversations. Quite often they're with people they know, which is nice.
So, Gav.
Yeah.
So the NHS is telling us take it into the community. Yeah. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
Do you think it works for other people?
Yeah, definitely, because there's too many people being diagnosed when they have a severe event or a traumatic event, a heart attack, or something like me where I'm drowning at home because I've got severe symptoms, etc. There's too many people that are too far down the line of heart failure, and the impact of that is that the recovery, or the potential to recover a little bit, is depleted. So instead of your trajectory being we catch you early, we do an almost screening event where we pick up somebody who's got a bit of high blood pressure at this stage. We can get in early, we can do the intervention. Sure. Yeah. So your trajectory to recover is that much steeper. If you're way down the line, you're sort of way down the line, you're not going to get anywhere near that. I mean, I was fortunate. I was diagnosed in 2019. I mean, we take the COVID equation out. This is all pre-COVID. But then once we come out of lockdown, I start to walk and everything, and I get to the point where I've recovered so well with all the medication. I get on the right medication, I get cardiac rehab in there, I get all the things. I walk a marathon,
Yeah,
So
awesome.
and you passed a couple of cardiologists as well.
That were on the way, and
one was on ibuprofen as well.
I went into shock at some point, but that's another story. But anyway, but for me, catching them early, we shouldn't be waiting until people turn up at hospital like me and having to spend 2 or 3 days in hospital and having a significant event to get there. We catch them early, we get them, we look at comorbidities, and we ask everybody that's doing any kind of conversation with people, whether it's asthma, diabetes, whatever it is there a chance that this person might have heart failure? And a simple blood test can eliminate that.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Could you have... I'm not saying you got bad service at all, because I know the people involved in what you did, because it was really, really cool.
Yeah.
But could you have had your diagnosis and treatment outside of the hospital?
Yeah.
To the same impact?
I definitely
Or do you think you needed that?
I think...
square building.
Unfortunately, I think I was a victim of circumstance, and part of that was my circumstances. The fact that I'd just taken on a step up in a role, moving to a different local authority and work-wise, had a lot of commitments, a lot of pressure on me, and that. So I kind of neglected my own health, really. So had I gone early, had I been picked up early, had I gone to an event or one of these events, just gone along thinking, actually, I've got some. Had I seen beat and gone breathless, exhausting, Wasn't ankle swelling, but it was abdominal swelling in my case. Time to visit a doctor. That makes perfect sense. Because my wife will tell you at that time, when I was having, the reason why she was pushing me so much was they were talking about lung cancer a lot on the TV. There's a big campaign on about lung cancer. Nothing about heart failure on the TV. And it was that triggered me to go to the GP in the first place.
Living with heart failure can feel frightening and lonely, especially when you're first diagnosed. The Pumping Marvellous Foundation exists to make sure no one faces heart failure alone. Through trusted information, patient resources and supportive communities, we help thousands of people across the UK every year. If you believe everyone deserves that support, please consider making a small donation today. Visit pumpingmarvellous.org and help someone feel less alone.
So here we go for Amy. This is your time. So I get asked this a lot. Okay, and say, well, who funds the big? Because they're big. We do a lot of them, and it takes a lot of effort, not just sort of physical, willpower, emotional. There's a financial pinch as well. So, what attracted Medtronic to support the Beat Heart Health events, and why are you still doing it?
Well.
And please don't stop.
Well, we don't want to.
Okay.
It's recorded as well, though.
I know.
We can continue next year and the year after.
Didn't make any promises there.
No, I know.
It was just
we don't want to. I think, Medtronic is a medical device organisation. We are...
What do you do? What are medical devices?
It's so huge. It can be anything from a tiny cannula or a syringe in a hospital or a GP.
A little thing cannulas, that you put in when you...
If you have an injection, a syringe, a glove that's used, all of those are classified as medical devices, all the way up to cardiac devices that go inside your body and save people's lives, defibrillators inside the body, all the way up to huge capital pieces of equipment like robots that are used for surgery. So it's a huge breadth of devices that we have. And so Medtronic has basically 20 different businesses inside of it. It is one of the leading global leading companies. And we cover, it's easier to say what we don't do. We don't really do ophthalmology and we don't do hips and knees. But otherwise we touch every care pathway.
Events. Why?
So our Medtronic's history is born in cardiovascular. So our founder, I reckon, he tested heart defibrillators in his own garage. And so the heart of the organisation is really cardiovascular. And then about 10 years ago, the business really started to understand that there was an issue around heart failure and seeing patients and even talking to cardiovascular teams that the heart failure team was sometimes underfunded or those patients weren't really getting through the system. And so they started to do some work understanding what the challenges were in the system. And so they started to go out into the community and get the patient voice and also start to work with GPs. And that's kind of stuck. It's been a kind of insight generating aspect for Medtronic to understand how we can support the system better. And now it's just part of our business. And it's part of adding value. And I think one of the challenges that industry's always had is that industry does get a bit of a bad rep, that we're, deep pockets and we don't do any good, but we are trying. And some of the infrastructure around us with procurement, and that's in that terms is how things are bought into the NHS, has stopped us being able to do things that are more philanthropic or more, community-based or patient-orientated. And actually, some of the levers that are being pulled into procurement now is looking at things like social value. And that is really the heart of what we're doing here. And so that has helped organisations now think about how we do things differently. But ultimately, these events were really to try and drive that different perspectives of care so that we can really drive innovation as well in what we do, how we deliver devices, but also make sure that those devices are doing what they should be doing and getting to the right patients, because it's the right treatment for the right patient at the right time. I'd
just like to say as well, it's a hands-off educational grant that you give us, and I guarantee you do not have any, they don't have any saying what happens. Your teams just turn up and help.
Yes.
I mean, if you ever done one of these events, when they say help, I'm talking queue management, I'm talking clipboard management, I'm talking communication, all that sort of stuff. So it really is like, it's the important stuff that happens to the events. But why is this important from an innovation in healthcare improvement perspective? Why do you think it's, or maybe Gail, you answer that? I mean,
you go first.
Well, I think it's just so important. You kind of covered it there. The pharma industry have had a bad rep, and I think the NHS have probably driven some of that just from historical things that have happened in the past. Before my time, you used to be able to go to a GP practice and say, we'll take you on holiday if you buy our meds. None of that happens now, and it's clear to a lot of us that just doesn't work like that. But I think in the NHS, the costs were so big, it takes us a long time to come forward on some of those things and kind of get up to scratch. Whereas in your companies, ABPI came in quite quickly, and you have to go on the courses and you learn how to make sure things are done right and how you act properly. Whereas we don't do that in the NHS, we just go by what we've always known. And so we find it incredibly difficult, I think, to trust some of the bigger agencies. But I think when we do pieces of work like this, and I've done some work with some other in a collaborative way, it's a way of us demonstrating to those people at the top, which I'm certainly not, of the ICB, that actually, look how well this has worked. And you know what? We didn't have to buy their drugs. It just happens to be that they produce something in that arena. Generally, that's not even the case. Sometimes I say, well, we'll work with you on CVD, but actually we do drugs for diabetes. Well, great, because it doesn't really, we're not buying those particular drugs. So I think there's some real added value to have there. But I think as well, it's the innovation. The NHS doesn't have a lot of innovation because we're so used to doing things in a certain way. And
do you think it's misused, the word? Because a lot of stuff we do is inventing.
Yeah,
I find innovation is just learning from something else and adopting that methodology.
It's just doing it a bit different, isn't it? And it's,
I may be wrong.
Sometimes it's doing things, it's given us the green light to go ahead and do that. And I think that's what we get from you guys, is it's like, do you know what? Well, we'll start and you can come along and see what you think. And actually then we're like, this is really good. Let's carry on.
And what I think the Beat Heart Health events, and we've got ICBs and we've got PCNs funding now, which is cool.
Yeah.
Because then it's about system scalability and adoption. The VC funding, but they're not after the venture capital. But the fund was by Medtronic. They saw the opportunity. They knew that we could. I mean, it took a long time to work out what the algorithm was for doing it well. But definitely we have had an impact. And when you start getting cohorts, so that's the amount of people of up to, well, I think by the end of the year, maybe it was 16, 17,000, it starts making it starts making waves, and people start to listen because they're going big data. Mm-hmm. And nobody's done it before. Gail, from your perspective, because I know you think, I mean, you have one every week, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yes.
It's probably run out of population.
and money. Medtronic could be bankrupt because we get one every week.
Yeah. They'd be looking for a discount. What have you learned from being at one of the events? From from the patient perspective, what have you? Because I love just trying to stand back from it all. Although I usually get dragged in with a clipboard, and just watch the people. What have you seen? So
I've done community events for a long time. That's my background in the NHS. And we often bring people together to do stuff. We take people's blood pressure and tell them they've got hypertension, and that kind of stuff is really good. But what I see with Beat is that someone will come in and be like, I've popped in because I've got a little niggle. And actually we get them to the virtual ward, which is like being on a hospital ward, but just not in hospital, which is incredible. So they don't have to go into the big square building. We treat them in their own community. but it's sort of that kind of bridging that gap in between. So you've got your person who's a runner and they've come in and a bit like you, I'm a bit breathless and it's not been like this before and I'm not really sure what's going on, and take their blood pressure, ask them the questions, and then they have their finger pricked on and it's like, okay, yeah, something's going on here. The cardiologist is here. We'll do your echo right here. And then they've got their diagnosis and they're on the virtual ward and they're on the right medication. And that's been in 60 minutes, whereas that normal process would have taken at least 6 weeks, and not through any fault of the patient. It's just that that's how long it takes to go to GP and get an appointment and then have a referral and then for the consultant to see you. And that appointment takes 6 weeks and you've got to find somewhere to park at the hospital and it needs to be on a suitable time for you to, and there's lots to go into that. And I just think it's incredible that we can do something close to people's homes that takes such a small amount of time, is not invasive, and cuts out all that, the financial cost of the NHS because it's much cheaper to do it this way. And the cost to the patient, it hasn't cost them going to hospital, being stressed, staying 2 nights, having their family having to come see them. What if I die? There's none of that. And so why aren't we doing this? That's my question kind of back, is I see all the good that comes out of it. Why aren't we doing it? And maybe it's mine and Amy's job to make the rest of the NHS see this is the way forward, seeing people in the communities closer to home. The NHS kind of know that, the 10-year plan is coming, but we just need to keep on banging that gong, I think, until we get there.
So these Beat Heart Health events, I mean, we did one at 2 back-to-back. Oh, I was absolutely shattered. And I had to drive back from Bexhill on sea, so South Coast. But we saw about over 1,000 people. And it was an amazing experience. And it always is an amazing experience. Regionality actually is quite interesting to look at. But people were just turning up, and no word of a lie. I mean, the wife was dragging the guy. But when the guy got in, he was like, "All right, Jim, Bob, you're right. Colin, you're right over there. Oh yeah, I'm just like, I've seen you for," and it was like a community. They forgot the fact that they were here to be, tested, because that's the reason why they came. And it became like a community event where everybody knew everybody else, but I haven't seen them for like ages, or they may have just seen them yesterday because they're the next door neighbour and they were coming as a crew. I mean, it was like, sometimes it's like whole like coach parties turning up. It's like 50 people just turn up and we think, where they come from? But looking at the people dynamics, looking at the tribe, and football as well. We do stuff obviously with Everton, but we've done it around the country with other football clubs like Birmingham, Cardiff, Stoke, blah blah blah.
It's around that. It's health literacy, isn't it? So,
but people still put off the going, don't they? So,
well, I was going to say, we expect people to read. People in Cheshire and Mersey, some people have a reading age of 7. So
but that's like
we can't expect them,
everywhere.
Yeah, we can't expect them to read a letter from the hospital. But actually, what they will do is they will listen to Gavin and be like, "Can I ask you a question? Did you know this? Did that happen? What about this? What?" And then they'll be like, "Oh, actually, maybe it will be okay for me to go." And it kind of gives them that encouragement. And that's what we need, that word of mouth.
So, Gav, what would you say someone experienced symptoms but putting off seeking help?
Yeah, don't delay it, really, is the key message, is don't delay that. If you've got any of these symptoms, the breathlessness, the exhaustion, ankle swelling, abdominal swelling, it is time to go and see somebody, whether that's a nurse or go to a friendly face. It doesn't have to be turn up at your GP surgery or thing. Go to a friendly face. If you've already got a clinic booked in, have a word with them and let them do the conversation with the GP, etc. Because I can tell you, the earlier you get diagnosed, then the quicker the potential recovery and the improvement in your quality of life occurs.
Yeah. How many years from diagnosis are you now?
Well, I was 2019, so what are we, 7 years on, but I've been through every stage, and I'm 2 years post-heart transplant now.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's amazing. And I think that's it, isn't it? It's not a death sentence. And the sooner you go, the less likely that is.
That's it. And I think that prolonged, I mean, the stats are right. If you Google, and most people will do, that'll be an instant thing you'll Google now, you'll do a search engine, it'll say you're not going to live beyond 5 years.
Yeah, you are.
And there are, but those stats are heavily weighted towards the older end of the population that probably wouldn't have had that lifespan. But we've got a lot of young people in our community within the Pumping Marvellous Foundation that are being diagnosed 18 and under, 18, 20, 30. And I think that's something with the Beat HF. What we need to do with the Beat to Treat the events is really get out there and expand that, if we can expand that, turning up at places where it isn't the older population, isn't that, it is that thing, the football communities, can we encourage some of those younger people, maybe I'm saying like 40s really, rather than 50s, 60s, to come along as well, because they might be experiencing those symptoms and we know it happens.
So at an event you were at in Speak in Liverpool, South Liverpool, near the airport, we saw 376 people in a day, and it wasn't us, it was John Moores University nursing students, and then the primary care network teams, so nurses and GPs, and great job, 376 people. And then we deployed our AI Echo, which we've never done before, at a mass screening event, and we offered 24 NT-proBNP blood tests, which is the simple blood test that rules out heart failure. It tells us whether you forget heart failure or you go for a heart scan, an echo, or you get referred for an echo or heart scan. So 400 is the magic number. A song about that, but I'm not going to sing. Somebody's just gone, God, he thinks who does he think he is?
Someone's just switched off now.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Pause. You have to see where, like the stats, where they shut off just now.
Maybe you should have sang.
I can't even remember what I can't remember what I was going to say
it's
now.
4 though, isn't it, the magic number?
Yeah, so anyway, 24 simple blood tests. And of those simple blood tests, we found 10 cases of heart failure, 7 heart failure with preserved ejection, which is a type of heart failure, 2 with reduced ejection fraction, which is a type of heart failure, and 1 with a heart failure with mildly reduced ejection fraction. 10 people. The prevalence of that is through the roof. Yeah. We also found over 50% of people had hypertension. So, question to the system leader, how many people do you think are currently living with some form of undiagnosed cardiovascular disease?
So many, more than 70,000.
I'm not even going to ask you about heart failure, because I think that's probably
even higher.
Well over 1 million.
Yeah. It's definitely a big education piece. And I know you've done some education for the primary care staff. And I just think, like I said, I think it's just kind of got put to the back that everything's a priority. So we've worked on cancer, and now cancer is less of a priority than CVD, because CVD is what's killing people now. Now that's our focus, but that's kind of how it works in the NHS. We've got to focus on something.
Isn't it?
Yeah. So we focus on one thing at a time, and when that one thing gets better, then we go to the next thing, and then that thing gets worse. So yeah, it's really cyclical. But I think, we've kind of just got to get that message out there. I think for me, it's had an impact in that I'm not clinical at all. And actually before all of this, I didn't really know a lot about heart failure. It's the old person's disease, so why would I? Don't work in that field. But actually now I find myself in the post office, and poor Deirdre in front of me, she's huffing and puffing, and her ankles are really swollen. And I just say to her, you've spoken to your GP about your feet swelling and your breathlessness? And she's like, well, no, do you think I should? Yeah, I think you probably should. And so I'm not clinically saying anything to her. I'm just putting that seed in her mind that she should probably go and speak to somebody. And I think it's that what makes a real difference. And the ICB leaders love to say, well, those people that come to those events, they're just the worried well. Well, those statistics say that's not the case. They weren't worried and they weren't well. They just popped in because it was a community event and they thought they'd get a free cup of tea.
Yeah.
But there is a real benefit to that though, because you're also ruling people out of the system, right? And that is a huge benefit from a psychological perspective to those patients, that they are feeling well, and you reassure them that they're feeling well.
And also the opportunity as well to say, if you carry on with your hypertension the way it is, if you don't reduce your salt, if you don't exercise more, drink more fluids, you are going to end up back here having this test done for heart failure. And all right, they know, and that's going to be sooner, but actually that's even sooner, isn't it? Let's reduce the hypertension. Yeah. Let's get a little bit earlier. Let's stop them from smoking. Yeah. Let's get them a little bit earlier. Let's not have their kids smoking.
Yeah.
It's all like a big long line of things that we can do, but we've just got to start doing it.
The obesity levels, I hate the word obesity.
Horrible, isn't it?
I hate it. Absolutely with a passion.
There are no good alternatives though.
The obesity levels are through the roof. Yeah. So we've just got initial data from one of our sites, and out of the cohort of people that we've seen over the last 6 months, there's only 5 people that have a BMI. And I know BMI's not always, okay, but it's the only thing we sort of have. The BMI is overweight or obese in all but 5. Just under 70% are obese, which has a BMI over 30. And there's a lot of people like that. So CVD is a big, big area, huge area. And on that note, I think the key messages from today's discussion are clear, and earlier recognition, without any question, leads to earlier diagnosis, which hopefully leads to earlier treatment and the right treatment, the appropriate treatment, and not inhalers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For heart failure, may have asthma, but think
Probably
about
do.
heart failure. Leads to better health outcomes. We talk about health outcomes all the time, and it's a bit like we're in our NHS healthcare bubble. But health outcomes are this, okay? Quality of life. Allow people the opportunity, give people the opportunity, coach, develop, and support them to have a better quality of life, and whatever that looks like for somebody, because it's all different. Better length of life, because we know that if we get the right treatments in, so that's pharmacological and device therapies, people have a better length of life and a better quality of life. And then the system, and we all sort of shy away a little bit in public talking about money, but actually heart failure, anywhere between £2 to £3 billion a year it costs. And a lot of that is the hospital admissions, because people who with heart failure on average stay 10 days in what I call the NHS Hilton. That's it's a central London NHS Hilton, because it's about £400 to £500 a night, which equates to £4,000 to £5,000 every time they go in. And heart failure in the over 65s particularly is the highest for any condition. And that is exactly why these Beat Heart Health events are important, and they matter. They don't just matter to patients, they matter to the system, and they matter to everybody. It's not the only solution, but it's a good way of finding people. And on that note, thank you very much for joining me. And the big blue and white sign, Heart Failure Unfiltered, which I'm so pleased with.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Beat Heart Health events show what becomes possible when patients, healthcare systems, charities, and life science companies work together around a shared goal: finding people earlier, treating them sooner, and helping them live longer, better lives. Because when it comes to heart health, earlier changes everything.